Livealie was obviously built out of a dark ending. Music can like heal and change people in so many ways. And it's this place where people can kind of just come together within the static and just be themselves and find themselves, ultimately.
Welcome to the Spencer Whiteout podcast. Rated R.
You have some criminal charges with you, bro. Guess like we're avoiding the sharks. Call it leather fetish, dude.
Yo, great turbo neck guy.
I'll give you a kiss. You give me your number.
That checked out a ton, dude. Tell me you felt.
We're Americans. We're the ones that are descendants from the 1776 musket-bearing motherfuckers.
Welcome to the Spencer Whiteout podcast, where we collect experiences as badges, memories as treasures, and stories as wealth. Today, I interview James Harrison, the vocalist of Livealie. In this episode, we talk all about his time in Ocean's 8, Alaska, Warped Tour, the pros and cons of a DIY approach, best and worst live shows, and Livealie's debut album, Living in the Static. Let's dive in. How did you get into heavier music, and kind of what was the process for learning to scream and sing?
I guess my first kind of couple of gateway bands were definitely kind of As I Lay Dying and Bring Me's first release. I went to a music school. I was in a pop punk band, actually. So pop punk, we'll probably refer to that quite a lot throughout this chat, but it's definitely like a big love of mine. And from there, I guess I kind of just progressively got into heavier and heavier music. The band I was in at the time, we're talking about when I was, 14, 15 years old, started to play around with screams and things like that. And I was fortunate enough that being at this music school, we had practice rooms. So pretty much every day after school, even sometimes bunking off lessons and stuff, we'd go and hang out in the practice rooms and just jam, me and a few school friends. And yeah, I remember listening to Pray for Plagues and things like that and just being like, man, that sounds gnarly. And then just trying to replicate it. And my friends were just like, whoa, like, you're actually pretty decent at that. And I think it just kind of stuck from there. And that pop punk band kind of progressed more into like a post-hardcore band. So yeah, that's kind of my initial entry, I guess, into metal and heavier music.
Do you remember like the first album you bought or some of the first CDs that were really influential?
Yeah, I guess very first kind of album within, I guess, like the alternative scene, again, was probably a number of Blink-182 albums. I can't really like pick one out. I'm not kind of an album guy. I tend to, and have always been into kind of just like individual tracks and playlists. Like I'd always be making mixtapes and things. So originally on cassette, then on CD, and obviously now via streaming services and things like that. So yeah, I very rarely listen to something kind of like front to back, which I guess is quite an oddity in the music scene, but it's just how I've always been. I've always enjoyed music as a whole, not just particular genres. So even though we're talking about kind of the underground scene here on today's podcast, I listen to a lot of other stuff outside of that as well. So yeah, I'd probably say a lot of Blink's initial kind of 3-4 albums were the first I went to kind of HMV and purchased.
Nice. And I see the kind of pop punk apparel has bled over, and today you're wearing that flannel, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a wardrobe full of flannels. Almost one for each day of the month. So yeah, that's just my thing. I just enjoy wearing them.
There you go. And tell me about a best show and a worst show that you've had over your career.
There's been so many highlights. Our first ever US show at Chain Reaction in California was definitely kind of a standout moment for me. It was obviously off the cusp of Ocean's debut album. We'd done a lot of touring across kind of Europe and the UK and things like that before. We didn't really have any expectations. We'd obviously just signed to kind of Fearless Records, and yeah, we booked a headline routing show at Chain. We flew into LA and we was going to drive up the coast to Vancouver, which was our kind of first show date on the North Lane in Hearts Wake North American tour. So I didn't have any expectations, and we just turned up and there was just hundreds of kids there, and it kind of just blew my mind. And that kind of show will always, be a really prominent memory for me.
That's so good. And did you know I work at Chain Reaction? Did you know that?
I did not know that. No way.
Yeah, bro.
That's crazy.
Such a legendary venue. And I wish I was at that show. I didn't see Ocean's 8 Alaska back then, but I did see them when they came through Chain with Invent Animate. And that was with the other vocalist, Jake, I believe.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. I think Ocean's played there about 3 or 4 times now in their career. Yeah.
Yeah, right on. And then what about a worse show?
When we first started out, we played shows to a couple of people in the crowd. There's times when you kind of start out as a band that definitely test you, but it's also a great time to kind of practice, understand, shows aren't always going to turn out how you want, whether it's from kind of a crowd participation perspective, whether it's the sound or things like that, or just your own personal performance. So again, I've not got like one particular bad show to pick out. If we're going to talk about kind of like injuries and stuff like that, I can talk for days on things that have happened to me during shows and stuff like that.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So I guess the main one would be in El Paso, Texas, our second North American tour, which was with Bless the Fall. And yeah, I just completely misinterpreted the end of the stage and just walked straight off it and smashed my head on the barrier, between the stage and the crowd. And just clean knocked myself out.
Wow.
Third song in. And I woke up in the back of the ambulance, which sucked because obviously being British, we're used to kind of free healthcare and things. So that was instantly like, well, that's some money gone down the drain. Yeah. And I woke up some gnarly concussion and a lot of bruising to kind of like my pelvis and hip. And that kind of forced me to go in for a CT scan and just get checked out. But yeah, I felt so silly and goofy after that, It was just like totally my own fault. Obviously, I had to cut the set short. So I guess based on that, that'd probably be my worst show. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I would say so. So with that, you said you were 3 songs in, you fall off the stage, you get knocked out. Like when you woke up, how confused were you in the ambulance?
Yeah, I was pretty confused. Like it's not all like a clear memory to me, obviously, because of banging my head. But I just remember kind of the days and weeks after that. There's some pictures that like circulated online, and like the whole left side of my body was just like, from where I smashed my pelvis as well, was just like basically black and blue, like all up the side of my body. And I don't like to miss shows or anything like that. So like the next day I was at the hospital en route to the next show and like pretty much played the next show like as expected, just without any movement because I physically couldn't move my body. It was so bruised and painful. So I just leant on the mic stand, did that for kind of like a week or two. And it was a pretty long run of shows. I think it was like 5, almost 6 weeks or something like that. So for the next like couple of weeks, it was pretty slow going for me in terms of stage presence. I definitely think the rest of the guys had to up it in that sense. But just got to crack on and, keep going. Owe it always to the fans to, put on a great show and things like that and be where I am in my career. So I just felt it necessary to get on stage the next day and every day after that, even though I really, shouldn't have been. So, yeah, like the crazy thing is like, I don't think we actually ever went back to El Paso or that specific area. So every now and then I'll get like a message like, oh, like I was at that show when you fell off the stage. And I'm like, thanks for bringing that back up. But yeah, it's a shame because I don't think people at that show ever kind of got to see us again in the flesh. So yeah, it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah. And then how about a favorite tour memory?
I think it must have been Warped Tour. Being kind of a British kid, for me, we obviously grow up with a ton of incredible tours and music festivals here in Europe and the UK. But there was something for me that always just stood out about Van's Warped Tour. I remember as a very young teenager getting the No Room for Rock Stars DVD, which was kind of a documentary on Warped Tour. It followed Suicide Silence, Never Shout Never, a few other kind of it bands around that time. And ever since I watched that, I was just like, man, I want to go or be on Warped Tour. And in my mind, like that was kind of my ultimate goal. Yeah, in 2016, we got to go on that tour for the whole summer. And I just made so many great friends that I'm still in contact with now, you know, almost 8 years on. And another reason was it was the year Pokemon Go came out that particular summer. So everyone and their parents were playing Pokemon Go. So I remember like standing there in the middle of the day and just seeing people playing Pokemon Go and then watching awesome bands. And
it's like a dream come true.
Yeah. It was great because it meant that like we wasn't just confined to like the festival parkland. Often like we'd go and explore the cities. And for me being from England, that was kind of really cool to see because more often than not, I do get to, you know, travel from city to city, but you're usually confined to a venue space. So you don't get to see much other than coming kind of in and out. So that for me was like an additional bonus to the highlight of being on Warped Tour is that I get to travel around a lot, playing Pokemon Go, exploring like the cities we was playing in. And obviously it's a full day event as well. So you get to see so many other amazing bands, a lot of which, you know, I've been fans for a long time. So yeah, I think that's definitely was my favorite run for sure.
Yeah. And how brutal was it? Because, I mean, you hear a lot of, you know, stories about just how hot it is, how crazy it is. It really is an endurance run. I mean, it's like the entire summer, you're going across the entire USA. Give me some of the like nitty gritty details about that tour.
Yeah, man. It was very hard work. We was fortunate to share a buzz with a band called Gideon. So we kind of buckled up on a nice aircon buzz. Before that, every other tour had been in kind of a, you know, a band van and things like that. And we'd been sleeping in the footwells or on the chairs overnight between venue to venue. And so that was definitely much, much nicer. If we'd have been in like a traditional van, I think we would have struggled for sure. So that allowed us to have a bit more, you know, outbreak space, our own toilet, like video game consoles and things, just to kind of chill out and get away from it all. Because it is very full on. It's really, really long days. You know, you roll up at the festival grounds very early, 6, 7 a.m. pretty much every day. And it's kind of first come, first serve on kind of tent merch store positioning and stuff. So we ran our own merch store and things like that. So we'd be up crack of dawn, you know, trucking over our merch tent and all of our merchandise and setting all of that up. And we kind of take it in turns, like day to day on like a rota basis. And then, yeah, it's just the middle of summer. So you're pretty much in baking sun all day, every day without any reprise. And that takes a toll just on you mentally and physically, I guess. So yeah, it was hard, but then it was, as I've already mentioned, it was full of so many great times as well. And then kind of once the day is finished, the entire festival packs up and moves on and sets up again the next day. So again, you're hauling all your merch tent and everything and all your gear back to the buzz to get that loaded on as quick as you can. Yeah, on to the next day. So yeah, it was grueling, but during the day, hanging out by the merch tent and stuff, I met so many incredible people that had come by the tent just to say hi or grab some merch. And I definitely made a lot of long-lasting friends. I guess you could call them fans as well. You know, I still talk to today, follow on social media and things like that. And that's another part of kind of being in a band that I just really enjoyed, was just connecting with people, talking to them, hearing their stories, understanding, you know, a little bit about them and kind of why they connect with our music. So yeah, it was grueling, but it was totally 100% worth it. Definitely, it was just a life goal for me to sort of kind of tick that off on the list. Yeah, I'll die happy with that for sure.
Yeah. And I actually saw you guys at the Mountain View date.
Yeah.
I remember a highlight was when I went to your set, I remember the amazing kind of epic medley intro that Ocean's 8 Alaska did, where it's like a combination of the different riffs and stuff from the album. And then you have that amazing, like, come out on stage and you do that big high ice cream. Super sick. And the highlight for me was I remember there was a dude in the crowd with a cereal box, and he was shaking the cereal right at the beginning of your set, and there was cereal flying everywhere. That was like a nice memory for me. And then it was funny because when I was researching for Livealie and this interview, I came across on the metalcore Reddit AMA somebody that mentioned the cereal, and I was like, dude, I was there. I was at that. I remember that. Like, it's so crazy.
I've seen that exact comment on the Reddit and stuff, and I remember that exact moment. I remember the Mountain View date as well because it was beautiful location. I had a few friends visiting on that date as well, so the set was a lot of fun as well that particular day. So yeah, that's crazy to know that he was there as well.
Yeah. And tell me about that intro that you guys did for Ocean's 8 Alaska. Like, what was the inspiration behind that? Because I always thought that was like a really cool way to kind of, you know, hype it up and give little teasers of the album. And it's kind of like a radio transistor going between different moments of the album.
Yeah, so that whole debut album, Lost Isles, was based around the whole kind of event and happening of the name Ocean's 8 Alaska. So for those who don't know, there was a major tsunami in Latoya Bay back in 1958, I believe, which pretty much to this date has been like the biggest tsunami ever in recorded history. Not for kind of death toll or anything like that, but for the size of the wave. And it pretty much, you know, wiped trees off the tops of mountains. It was that huge. So for that intro, 432, we basically took radio and news cuttings and kind of mashed them all up into that intro with kind of just a crazy breakdown. So yeah, that was kind of our obviously very first song on the debut record, and we just felt that that was a great way to kind of introduce the band, the namesake and the meaning behind it.
And switching gears a little bit, talk about building a stable career outside of music. So you work in the game industry, yeah? You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So it seems really odd to say, but music, it hasn't been my only love for like a long while. I've worked in the game industry for a while now. I'm fortunate enough to work as kind of a producer in a freelance state. So I kind of drift from game to game, and kind of over the past 6+ years now, I've worked with a number of kind of like household titles from kind of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, PUBG, Fortnite, Doom, just to name a few. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoy it. I'm a massive gamer myself. I always have been. Very first kind of video game love was Halo 2, Halo 3. I remember LAN parties with all my teenage friends. Get them all over on the weekends. Parents would order some pizza in for us, and we just, stay up all night gaming and things like that. So, yeah, I got fond memories of that. So it just kind of made sense with my love for like music and art and things like that to push it into another avenue. It's worth mentioning it as well that to make a living in the music industry is tough, especially with kind of the nichety of the metal genre, I guess, unless you're really right at the top, there's not many bands that are making like a stable living. So for me, that was really important to be able to look after myself and my girlfriend and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. And then how do you balance those passions?
Oh, it's tough. Yeah, it is really tough. It's hard to say. I don't know how I do it really. I am constantly busy, so much so that I find I kind of have very little time to just chill out and relax, and sometimes that can become an issue, I guess, feel burnt out and things like that. So yeah, I'm fortunate enough that like my job is, fully remote within the games industry. I can just pick it up, do it when I want, when I need that extra income and things like that. So that's handy. But also when you're running like your own kind of business and things like that, it can come in waves. So there'll be periods where just I'm incredibly busy with gaming and things like that, and I just won't have any capacity to even look at music. And then there'll be other times where it'll just be 100% music and it's kind of full throttle on that. So yeah, it comes in waves. I take it as it is, and I enjoy it that way.
Dude, I'm stoked that you mentioned Halo LAN parties, because that's something me and my friends have actually been doing that again, and it's been amazing.
Yeah, for sure. I love games like that. I guess just to like shout out a really indie game. There's a game called Hypercharge at the moment.
Small Soldiers.
But it's Small Soldiers inspired. Actually, this game, you like actually play as like a little toy. A bit like Toy Story, I guess, but it's got that like FPS shooter kind of vibe to it. And me and my friends have just been loving it. Like over the Christmas period that's just gone, like we've played a crap ton of that game, and it's by a British game developer. I think it's like a team of 2 or 3 guys, but it's like, in my opinion, on par with a lot of like the AAA games that are like built by, you know, these multi-billion-pound corporations and things like that. So yeah, I love stuff like that.
Yeah, that is a good one. I'm not much of a gamer, but I do love Hypercharged and Halo, so it's funny that we connect on those. And then talk to me about Livealie's formation. Where did you get the name, and then how did you guys meet?
Yeah, basically we met on Warped Tour. So yeah, we met there and just obviously formed friendships and things like that. And I guess in the light of me initially parting ways with Oceans back in 2017, we decided to kind of throw the idea around of kind of like creating a band or doing something musically. And at the time, I was kind of in a catch-22 position. I'd pursued music for a long while. I dropped out of uni to do it and things like that. And I just I didn't really know where my head was. So I used that time to kind of, I guess, find myself a little bit, realize what did I want to do with life. And as we've just spoke about, that turned out to be kind of being a mishmash of music, the game industry and things like that as a creative outlet. So yeah, we played around with like a few ideas and kind of the sound we wanted to kind of create. And for me, like at the time, as fond a memory as I have, like being in Oceans and getting to tour and getting to travel, I never felt like I was ultimately at home in the band. I always struggled to connect with the music that we was creating. And for me, that was like a big personal and mental challenge to kind of put out music that, yes, I was proud of, but like ultimately it kind of just felt disconnected in some way, and I can't explain why or how. I just did. And we coined Livealie just off the back of kind of like, I felt like I was living a lie, literally. And yeah, it kind of just stemmed from there, I guess, like the initial band. We played around with kind of the setup and things like that. So not many people know, but like my first instrument, going all the way back to playing pop punk in school and stuff like that, was the bass guitar. And Livealie is a 4-piece metal band. I am heavy vocals, Jordan is clean vocals, but we're both bassists. So the idea is that moving kind of forward, depending on the types of songs and things we create, because, you know, we range from kind of this like heavy gent vibe to more traditional progressive metalcore to almost like a post-hardcore vibe with some of our songs. We can just like rotate basically, and I get enjoyment out of playing bass, so does Jordan, and we both also get enjoyment out of being vocals. And kind of that with Brandon on drums and Andrew on guitar just kind of seems to really work nicely in like a nice organic way, and we're all aligned on kind of the end vision, the goal, and everything we kind of want to create visually and musically. And yeah, it's just fun.
Yeah. And so how did you guys meet specifically on Warped Tour? Were they in other bands? Were they fans?
Yeah, they was in other bands. First like proper time we met was one of the New Jersey dates. I was side stage and things like that. Brandon, our drummer, is actually the ex-drummer of Awake in Providence, which is Will Ramos's old band. He's done a lot of touring and shows in the past with that, basically. And then Jordan and Andrew were in a band called Polarity, who was on not the whole Warped Tour run, but a number of shows. And yeah, I remember standing side stage and just being like, man, like this guitarist rips. I love this vocalist. And again, Pokemon Go and all of that and stuff. Yeah, we just kind of like met and kept in touch. And yeah, it just felt organic. You know, it was weird. Like, I can't explain it, but it's just like sometimes when you kind of connect with people, you just really connect with people. And even though we was like on 2 sides of the Atlantic Ocean, I just felt like we could talk about anything and everything, as though, you know, they was right here in the same city as me. And yeah, I just got really lucky with that, I guess. And it sounds really cliche to say, but it just felt like I kind of found my people at that particular moment in time. And yeah, I'm glad I did.
Yeah, you guys just connected and clicked. And these guys are from New York, is that right?
Yeah, New Jersey, New York area, yeah.
Gotcha. That must be tough to make it work between, you know, them 3 over there and then you out in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, but it's not as tough as you would imagine. I think like the internet shrunk the world. You know, it's pretty easy now to just jump on a FaceTime call or anything like that and chat. We write together. We pretty much talk daily. We have weekly FaceTime calls where we just hang out and just talk crap and update people on each other on our lives and things like that. And from a writing process, it's pretty streamlined. I mean, it was no different to, you know, if they was, again, here in the UK or I was over there in New York. We just write down the ideas. We'll jump on sessions together and just write together. And then kind of when it comes to record, I'll just record my demos here. Those guys will record their demos over there. And then we'll just get together for kind of the final record and piece and record that all together. And that's pretty much kind of how the debut album came together, really. It was pretty simple and straightforward and just kind of felt like it ran off Andrew's fingertips and it ran off mine and Jordan's tongue. It was just yeah, it was great.
And it ran off Brandon's drumstick, huh?
Yeah, his stick.
Yeah. And I guess that makes sense too with you being a vocalist and recording vocals. You know, you're kind of just putting that to whatever instrumentals that they've done and stuff. So I guess that works too.
I guess in the past with Oceans, like it was definitely that way. They was very, very meticulous on every instrumental element of a song. And it was very much like, this is the music. Now just go and write your vocals over the top. And that kind of relates back to my previous comments of how I just kind of felt a disconnect. It was very much like, well, in my personal opinion, I always thought the guys in Oceans were super talented and that they could have gone about it as an instrumental band, basically. I always felt like I was just like an afterthought, if that makes sense. And that kind
just
of
slapped on the top.
Yeah, and that for me doesn't like make music that resonates with me personally. No matter like how much I would write and stuff, it just felt like I was butting heads with something. It just never felt organic. Whereas like with the Livealie guys, it is so much more granular in terms of someone will write a vocal melody or something like that. We'll share it around, we'll all contribute to it. Guitar and musical elements will then either get like written to that, or for another song, it could be the complete opposite way around and we'll like an underlying riff or something like that of a particular idea. And then the vocals and the drums will get built around that. And it's just more of like a collaborative in sync vibe that I get with like the Livealie guys. And I think that just like benefits everyone overall because they all feel like they're contributing. You know, it's not just one or two kind of members just kind of like hogging the music creation and that element and stuff. And for me, that's like what a band is, you know. When you're in a band, everyone's equal. Like, yeah, I'm the vocalist, but I've never ever seen myself as like a standout member of the band or like, oh, look at me, you should all pay attention because I'm the vocalist. Like, I very much believe everyone in a band should be equal and have kind of equal same rights, equal input and everything like that. So yeah, I stand by that and have created Livealie in that vein, basically. And yeah, I think it works out for the better.
Yeah, and you can definitely hear that too. Like listening through this album, there'll be songs where it's only you singing and screaming, and then there's ones where it's more Jordan singing more of it, and it's like, oh, and then there's just a few parts of James coming in here and there. So it's like, it just kind of depends on the track of like what serves the song the best, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like nothing's forced. Like, you know, so much so that we're already moving into kind of the second album and things that we're writing for that and stuff. And I'm like happy to fully just take a back seat and just jam on the bass, man, because I fucking love doing that, you know? So yeah, I'm just looking forward to it. And yeah, I kind of agree with your notion there that we just kind of vibe out like a song and just, yeah, if Jordan fits better in a particular element, then I'm just going to stand back and let him do his thing. And if the guys want to go a bit heavier and have me at the forefront, then I'll step forward and do that too. So yeah, hopefully, you know, if people do listen to the debut album, like Living in a Static, they'll hear that from song to song, because that's the way we've kind of wrote it, to kind of take you on a journey through kind of the heavy, the lows, the more melodic singing and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I definitely heard it, and I think it's a great album. So I want to talk about these first 2 tracks that you guys released, Death Blooms, VHS, and then there was a 3-year gap between the next songs that came out. So I'm just curious, this is kind of a big question, multifaceted, but was the album done the whole time? What was going on behind the scenes? And did kind of splitting responsibilities between Livealie and Ocean's 8 Alaska for a time have anything to do with that?
Yeah, so it's hard to pinpoint a reasoning and stuff for the pause, I guess, with Livealie and everything like that. Ultimately, like when it comes down to it, I obviously rejoined Oceans for a period of time to kind of support them with the release of their 3rd album, Disparity. And at that time, the pandemic was going on and everything like that as well. So for like an international band, as much as I said how easy it was to kind of continue to do things, it did mean that where we would meet up regularly, i.e. I'd fly over to New York or something like that, that just kind of couldn't happen whatsoever. So it definitely, from that perspective, did stall everything. But the whole idea with like Livealie was to kind of, rather than doing a traditional album where you drop maybe 2 or 3 singles and then release other 8 tracks and be like, here's a full album, we wanted to kind of create like a constant stream of content. And we realized to do that, we'd need to do a lot of background work and not shout about it at all until the time was right. So we spent like a lot of that time, obviously writing the full debut album, but also planning the next release and the next release, to the point where Livealie pretty much has a 3 or 4 album schedule cycle release planned out. We've got like the album names logged in, we've got songs logged in, and yeah, the idea was that we'd come out of that pandemic and out of everything being able to just continually provide a constant update of like music, visuals, merchandise and things like that. And we obviously started that this past year, and now we're kind of the first year into like a multitude of yearly releases, essentially, is the idea behind it. So it's kind of breaking that mold. It follows more of like a content creator, YouTuber, streamer type of vibe, where like they're constantly releasing new content and being at the forefront of people's minds. I just thought with kind of the way bands release albums at the moment, it's like boom, big promo for like the first 6 months of an album coming out, and then they kind of just disappear off the face of the planet for maybe a year or 2. Yeah, they're touring and things like that, but in terms of new music and content in that regard, nothing. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of mix it up and give that a try, and I think it's working out well at the moment. We can definitely see that there's momentum gathering, but we're definitely excited to see how this progresses into kind of 2025 and the following year and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. And so you mentioned rejoining Ocean's 8 Alaska for a little bit, a couple of years there, and then Disparity comes out. I got to say, as a fan, as an outsider looking in, that whole Disparity release was a disaster. I don't know what the deal is with Fearless Records. I don't know how much you can talk about it, but it seemed like they just didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to promote it. And I was majorly bummed because Metamorph was awesome in 2020. Then it was like 2 years of radio silence. Then New Dawn came out, and that seemed like, oh, this is like an intro song, but then it's like not an intro song. It's like track number 10 or whatever on the album. There was no pre-orders. They barely marketed it at all, and it kind of like killed it for me. So I was bummed about that. I wanted to hear you speak about that, if you can, and kind of what are your thoughts on that release with Disparity?
Yeah. I mean, to put it plainly, a lot of shit went down. To like pinpoint and pull one reasoning out, I think would be unjust. But yeah, you're right. Initially, when kind of rejoining Oceans, I rejoined from a sentimental value. Things and stuff that I can't like really disclose from kind of like financial, contractual like things and stuff like that. But I guess to put it in like a roundabout way, Oceans were in like a big pickle. I guess on the verge of no longer existing, I guess, if you wanted to kind of put it bluntly. And the only way to kind of resolve that was for me to kind of come in and write this album for no monetary gain, essentially. Just literally for the personal love of the name and knowing in all of like the great moments and things we'd done together previously, essentially. And yeah, we wrote the album in full, did all the vocals, recorded the music video for Metamorph, released Metamorph, and then, yeah, you're right, everything kind of just went flat after that. We had a lot of contract struggles. I was rejoining at a time where Oceans had, just before I joined, just been let go from their booking agent, their manager. So Jason, I looked up to while I was in Oceans back in the Warped Tour days and things like that. He's an incredible manager. He manages bands like Loathe, Spirit Box, a lot of the it bands right now, I would say. And he's done a lot of work building them up to what they are. And he did a lot of great work for us. And I don't know if I'll ever find out like actually what happened in that situation. But yeah, he dropped us. Josh Klein, an incredible booking agent in America, dropped us. And yeah, I kind of rejoined at this really turbulent time. I took like comments for just as they were, and kind of as it went on, I realized that like the initial reasonings and things I'd been given weren't necessarily the truth. And it came out with why the album was delayed, basically, and things like that. And yeah, I think that just kind of completely killed the release. It was just like held to ransom by the label. And yeah, it sucked, man. It sucked. And with that, I just kind of, I don't know, I just felt like I was a bit used. Like, you guys have kind of just like pulled me back in just because I care about the name Oceans and how it connects with the fans and that sentimental side and value to it. Like, you pretty much just used me to like put out an album and then just F off again. And yeah, so I'm not one to like shy away. I'll always be like the person to kind of call something out when I see it. Like, I'm pretty straightforward in that kind of sense. Like, if I see something I don't like or I don't agree with, I'll let you know about it. And yeah, that's what happened. Pretty much most people now, if they want to do their research, will have heard what went on and everything like that with my departure from Oceans. And I still stick by it. Like, ultimately, like looking back on it now, as much as I know people enjoyed that album or certain songs from that third release, for me personally, it probably was a mistake. As much as I was still putting effort into Livealie, we definitely could be more further along than we currently are if I had have just focused on Livealie. So it's a shame.
It was a detour.
Yeah, it was a detour. I appreciate the rest of the Oceans guys for who they are. They are all incredibly talented musicians, without a doubt. But on a personal level, I just didn't fuck with some of the shit that I saw, heard, what went down. And yeah.
Yeah.
I just had to get out of it. And I did.
Yeah. Is Ocean's 8 Alaska off Fearless Records now? Was that like, did they just fulfill the contract with the third album? Is that what it was? Or are they still on there?
So they're not with Fearless anymore. So that also happened, obviously, shortly after the release of the album, parted ways with Fearless. That wasn't due to fulfilling the contract, if I'm honest. We still had options there, which weren't taken. So yeah, it was just a big mess, man. I could spill the beans and talk about this for days.
Yeah.
And like my close friends,
yeah, they already know.
They've put up with me ranting about stuff and things like for the past few years. So yeah, I just don't think it's right without other people from the band being here to kind of, justify or give their own experience or their own reasoning or to even defend themselves, for me to just kind of spill it all.
Right.
Yeah, ultimately it just didn't work out. I'm sorry if it upset anyone in terms of the fans or anything like that, but for me, I just see it as kind of a blip in a career that has had a ton of positive things surrounding it, both in Oceans and with Livealie. So yeah.
Yeah, and you're just turning the page into a more positive chapter, it sounds like. Yeah,
for sure. Definitely. Being in music is hard. you go through moments where like you can doubt yourself, doubt whether what you're doing is right, whether you're good enough, that kind of thing. And, you know, I've definitely had my own trials and tribulations like with that from a mental health perspective. But now I feel I'm in the most positive position I've kind of ever been in. I love what I do day in, day out now. Writing music right now is just a joy. I love it. And likewise with my other activities in the game industry and things like that. Yeah, it's just a ton of fun. So yeah, it's going good.
Yeah, and then I want to hear about kind of the benefits and challenges of being 100% DIY. You don't have a label this time around, so how's that been going?
Yeah, so we're independent out of choice. I think there's been a shift in the industry where sometimes when you want to release music, you have to jump through certain hoops if you're on like a label and things like that. And being independent definitely gives you more flexibility in that role. There's a lot of, you know, great pieces of software and services now that are out and around that enable you to upload your music and get it distributed worldwide to all kind of streaming services for pretty much little to no cost, which is essentially, in terms of digital distribution, exactly what a label would do. And then from kind of the physical distribution side of printing CDs, vinyls, tapes, or what have you, yes, labels do have more reach, you know, special deals and things like that with distributors that you can benefit from. But ultimately, again, everything usually comes from one source of truth, that being the label's online store or something like that. So setting one up independently and just selling your own records, having them manufactured yourself is, again, exactly the same thing. As long as you kind of set up IRSC codes, things like that, so that they can be tracked, purchases, things like that, all of your royalties and whatnot, it's exactly the same. And again, that can near enough be done to little to no upfront investment as well, if you know the correct avenues. So, yeah, I wanted to give it a try. The Livealie guys, we spoke about it a lot. We all decided that that was probably the right route to go down. We've actually turned down some label offers purely because we wanted to go down that independent route. I don't know if that was the correct choice. Who's to say? But we're definitely happy with kind of like where we are right now. And it just means from a financial perspective as well, we can fund everything. We know exactly where our money's being spent, what it's going on. And then also we're recouping kind of 100% of the proceeds as well. So, you mustn't underestimate that when you're a musician, you're also a businessman. Mm-hmm. To be on top of the records, the figures, things like that is really important because, yeah, record labels finance everything. But at the end of the day, that's got to be recouped, like 100%. That's coming tour support, costs for music videos, promos, everything, you name it. That's all coming back out of the band's sales back into the hands of the record label, the agent, the management before the band sees anything. I think people underestimate that, and there was definitely shortfallings like being in Oceans initially, that we were so naive, we was just, taken advantage of and things like that. And being in the industry now over a decade, I've kind of grown a bit wiser to that. And I just think, yeah, why not try and do it all ourselves, do the release schedule a little bit different with the singles rather than just dropping an album and whatnot, and just see how it works out.
And then I myself am a filmmaker, and I tend to get inspired to write movies from music. So I'm wondering if there's been any movies that have inspired you to write music.
I don't have any particular directors or movie franchises in terms of story that inspires me. But from a visual perspective of kind of cinematography and elements like that, the whole horror genre of hidden cam footage, that kind of vibe is obviously a massive inspiration to Livealie. So things like Marble Hornets, the Blair Witch Project, that kind of stuff is a big inspiration into kind of our vibe. The whole reason we, shoot everything in old black and white cassette tape and stuff like that. So, yeah, there's definitely that. And then I am a big fan of kind of psychological horrors and things like that. So things like Donnie Darko and that kind of shares similarities with Livealie's vibe and style. And it's something, as we kind of progress, we're happy with the visuals and everything we're creating now, but we want with kind of each release, take it up a notch, make it better, make it visually more compelling and appealing, but also from kind of a story and narrative point of view, push that forward as well.
Yeah, dude, I love Donnie Darko. That's in my top 10. Such a good one.
Yeah, man. It's a great film. I've not watched it in a long while, actually, but when we got together and started planning like the initial release for Livealie, myself and Brandon like created a film list of like inspiring films and stuff. Brandon is definitely kind of like the driving force of the band in terms of those visual concepts. He was kind of like on hand, well, we all was when shooting the music videos and things like that to kind of push that narrative forward with the video crew and whatnot. So yeah, I love that kind of whole nostalgic kind of feeling as well.
Yeah, same. And when you make it in black and white, it's timeless. And so that's what I loved about your music videos is that, like, you know, you can tell they're kind of low budget, but they still have that high production value in monochrome and stuff. And I love the old school VHS effects and transitions and props and stuff. I just think it's a really cool aesthetic. So also with your music videos, you reuse the same actors. So there was like some world building and stuff in there as well.
Yeah. So first of all, we work with our close friend, Jake Kindred. So he has been a close friend of Ocean's and myself for a long time. He came on tours with us back in the day as kind of a videographer, photographer, that kind of thing. He has his own business now, primarily works as a videographer, director, other bands, as well as commercial shoots and things like that. And yeah, we kind of proposed this idea of like, hey, this is the release. Here's the music if you want to have a listen to it. And this is kind of like the vibe we want to give off. We've got a rough narrative story, and this will kind of be like evolving element throughout all of the music videos. And yeah, he pretty much built upon our initial ideas and just kind of molded it into pretty much exactly what we wanted, I guess, at the point. And we ended up shooting 6 music videos in 7 days. Guys flew over here to my place for 2 weeks, and we pretty much hung out, had pre-planned everything, and then just went and shot back-to-back music video. The whole idea was that we'd have this kind of central hub that we could do all of our performance cuts in to just make better use of time. And that kind of consisted of, I think, about over like 50 old CRT TVs. We hired a couple of guys from a company called Insanity Visuals. They specialize in like old retro TVs and gaming units, and they tour with them around the country to different like expos and stuff. So rather than hooking up their games consoles to all the TVs, we actually had them hook up kind of like pre-rendered 3D visuals and static and things like that, and had them placed around the stage. And then that kind of combined with like industrial props like piping, wires, polythene sheets, other kind of strip lighting blocks and stuff, kind of create that whole setting. And yeah, we spent 2 whole days of the 6 days in that particular room just filming performance cuts for 7 of the songs. That was pretty epic. And then the following day we moved and shot in this incredible church for one of our other music videos. We recorded in these derelict buildings for a couple more days. And yeah, it was just cool. The whole idea with kind of using like recurring actor, Ollie is his name. He's incredibly talented. We did kind of like a casting call and went through like the full selection. And when myself and my girlfriend Susie like saw him, I was just like, he's the guy. We knew instantly. We was like, he's got the look. He's got those like eyes that just are filled with despair. And he's going to be the one. And yeah, so we built a really great relationship with him. And I'd hope so that like in the future, as we get better at explaining and producing a narrative and stuff, that he can continue into those videos. Because as I said, yeah, we've got like a 3-album plan already pretty much set out. And the whole narrative, the whole theme, the whole title, even some of the songs done and ready. And yeah, it'd just be nice to kind of continue that through. Almost like a saga, I guess, like a movie saga, but in album form.
Yeah, an anthology, if you will.
Yes, anthology. That's a great word. Yeah, anthology.
And so how was it working with Buster Odeholm? He's got the best mixes, and obviously he did justice to this debut collection.
Yeah, he's great to work with. I've met him a couple of times just on the road in passing and things like that with festivals and stuff over the years. And he's uber talented. I think everyone knows that in terms of a musician, but also his production and producer work. And we wanted a darker tone and mix to the album. And we just thought that he would nail it. He was our first and only choice. Thankfully, he had the time to obviously mix and master the album. So yeah, it was great working with him. It was a pretty seamless process, really. Hopefully, we kind of get to continue working with him in the future.
And then what's your favorite song off this record?
It's so hard to say. I can't really pinpoint a single one, but if I was to just have a top 3 in no particular order, I think it would be Casting Shadows, Smothered, and A Liar at Best, I think. Yeah, they kind of resonate with me the most. The lyrical kind of like concept, I guess, for the album and writing it wasn't kind of from a personal, like my personal experiences or anything like that. I always try and kind of take myself out of that role when writing lyrics and things, and create like a narrative around a whole concept, which is what Livealie is, basically a concept band essentially. And it was just wrote from kind of this despair of not knowing what you are doing is right or wrong, questioning yourself from the band's name, say like living a lie essentially. And just feeling like you're kind of like lost and consumed by everything, and then finding this safe space, or like so we think, like within the static essentially. As we develop into like the next release and stuff, hopefully like that narrative builds out a little bit more.
Are you going to keep the black and white for the next albums?
Potentially. We've thrown around the idea. I don't want to spoil like anything, but there is like a particular song where I was like, if we're going to break it on the next album, that's the single to do it on, if you know what I mean. But yeah, we're undecided yet.
Yeah, well, there's a handful of bands that have done it, like Holding Absence, the 1975. Like, there's plenty that have done the black and white, then just popped out in color and everything. I'm a sucker for the black and white. I like the timelessness of it all.
Yeah, for sure. With this new release, it's a little less like VHS DVD, more a bit like Renaissance-y style twist to it, I guess. We have been toying with maybe sepia or something like that instead, just to like mix it up. So you've still got like the monochromatic vibe, but it's more of a sepia style. So yeah, it's open for discussion, I think, with the guys on that.
Yeah, I guess we got to wait and see. But speaking of favorite tracks, my favorite from the album is A Liar at Best. I mean, this track has it all. It's super catchy. It's got a massive chorus. I love the super bouncy part, like 2 minutes in. And then this track also has a solo in it. So super sick song. This one lyrically too, it seems to be speaking about like a back and forth of a relationship, not quite on the same page. I wanted to get your thoughts on this one.
When I first heard this song and Jordan predominantly sent across his lyrical ideas for the chorus on this one, I just knew it was it. I just heard it and I was like, dude, you've just written an incredible song there, man. Well done. And I love it because, as I mentioned earlier, it allows me to kind of sit back and just take in the music rather than being at like the forefront of a song. And I've never really had the chance to do that. And as a vocalist, but also a musician, I really appreciate that. There's some incredible melodies and vocal riffage that Jordan does in that song.
Vocal riffage.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah. He's an incredible vocalist. And I often feel, just because of my background in oceans, that could easily be overshadowed with people just commenting on social media and things about me. I made it clear earlier in one of the previous comments, I don't see like a band as any one singular person. I see everyone as an equal. So I'm happy that song is getting the recognition that it is. So much so that we've actually spoke about shooting like a music video for it very soon. We've got plans for kind of a future release mid 2025. I won't give away like too much detail, but I guess like plan would be is between now and then to kind of record a music video to just kind of have a second push of the debut album and highlight that song because, I think out of all of the songs on the album, it's definitely sync worthy, i.e. I think radio stations would be more likely to pick that one up and play. And from like a band perspective and stuff, that's always great because it gets you out to a lot of new listeners that you might not be able to pick up through like algorithms on streaming platforms and stuff like that. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that one. But I guess from like a writing perspective and the whole theming behind it, yeah, you're right. It's kind of like the back and forth of like an unstable relationship. The bits that I kind of like really like is where you've got kind of that call and response going on between Jordan and myself. We're like clean and uncleans within like the intro and kind of to the latter part of the song. And there's some lines where he will start and I will kind of finish or repeat, but then I will run up into a fresh sentence and then he will either finish or repeat. And it's kind of got this like, it's almost like a DNA strand, like, you know, like weaving in between each other. And that was the whole idea between that song and then with Andrew's solo and stuff as well. I think it just tied it all together really nicely.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song. And then what would you say your favorite lyrics are from this album?
Casting shadows in the dark. Every step I take leads me further from the start. Suspended in airwaves, frozen in still frame. Am I human anymore? That particular song was written years ago by me when I was in a really, really dark place. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just happy with the way I kind of delivered that opening line and I kind of like the emotion behind it and everything like that. And I hope people, when they listen to it, can hear that. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely my favorite line, I think, off the album.
Yeah, right on. And then in the future, are you guys planning to do any live shows and how's that going to work?
Yeah, we are. We've obviously all toured before, some shape or form over the years and things. You know, as I said, we met on Warped Tour. But the plan is to play shows. We have kind of all agreed that we don't want to be the circuit band that continuously tours and playing venues day in, day out, and that just don't do just to the whole band's vision and the vibe and the thematic that we're trying to present. So we're looking to kind of do like some one-off shows in certain areas, like this year in support of the album release and the forthcoming release we've got later on this year. And the whole idea is that it will be a show, but it'll also be like an experience. At least that's what we would like to do. So we're talking like the show with kind of like some sort of experiential element to it. We've obviously got this whole thematic with kind of like the cult leaders in the cloaks and stuff. And yeah, I just want to do something different, man. I played regular shows for years and years and years. And now we just kind of want to have a bit of fun and do something different. If it makes us stand out, like, so be it. That's not like the intention, you know, to just be like, oh, look at what this band is doing. For me, it's just like an art form. And I just love making art with these three other dudes. And yeah, if people enjoy that, then that's great.
And to end out this interview, what would you say the message of the band is, or maybe one thing they could take away from listening to Livealie's music?
Livealie was obviously built out of a dark ending, you know what I mean? In terms of feeling like you wasn't supposed to be, or you wasn't living a life worth kind of living or anything like that. So I guess I just want to like reiterate, and I've said this throughout my entire career, that no matter what type of music or what band, what solo artist you listen to, if that kind of connects with you and resonates with you and you just feel it like right here in your chest, and that's your way of like escaping or pushing you to better yourself and things like that, then just never stop listening. Music can like heal and change people in so many ways, and I've seen it through myself, but I've also seen it through hundreds of different people I've seen and I've met after we've played shows over the years who have come to me with different stories and things like that. And yeah, so I guess that's what Livealie is built out of. It's this place where people can kind of just come together within the static and just be themselves and find themselves ultimately.
Right on. And then anything you want to plug or promote before we head off?
No, I just want to say thanks for your time, dude. Really, really enjoyed the past hour and a bit chatting. And yeah, other than that, Livealie's debut album, Living in the Static, has just released. It's out on all streaming services worldwide. Do have a merch store as well with limited edition vinyl, really cool cassette tape, which doubles up as a table stand / light, as well as t-shirts and things like that. So if you're interested, please check that out. Being an independent band, that obviously really does help us out. But if you can't, or not in a financial position, no worries. I understand that. If you guys could just share or spread the word to anyone, that'd be great as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a rating / review. 5 stars is a power play. Be sure to follow the show and keep up with me on social medias at Spencer Whiteout to stay up to date. As always, stay tuned, stay hyped. That's a wrap.
And that's it.